Retro styling abounds in the brushed aluminum top and bottom plates, the old-school exposure control dials, the dual-purpose shutter speed/ISO dial is stunning, the full leather body, and a hybrid viewfinder that gives you both an optical and electronic display, which you can switch between with the push of a button. The X100VI successfully straddles the analog era and the 21st century camera experience. We also get a tilt touchscreen that sits flush in the body when folded away, although you can't flip it around and out of sight altogether like you can a vari-angle screen, which I'd prefer, or indeed the unique X Pro 3 screen. Still, this is a camera that suits low-level shooting, which I did a lot of to capture reflections in a wet Chinatown in London, and in Tokyo during the Fujifilm X Summit, and even more so for those who prefer a viewfinder. Prefer optical? You've got it. Want to make sure your exposure settings are okay? You simply have to briefly activate the 3.69 dot electronic display. Asking fellow camera reviewers, it appears that most stick to the EDF, but I think they're missing out. Personally, I love the optical display, especially for daylight street photography, because you can see outside the image area, marked in the display with a digital overlay, and therefore be prepared for when the action enters the frame. And for waist-level shooting, the tilt screen works a treat, although it's limited to a horizontal tilt. The controls are all logically placed and within easy reach, and once you've taken the time to dig through the menus and set up the camera how you wish, you can keep the viewfinder up to your eye and make adjustments without having to look for the required button or dial. The lens is the same fixed 23mm f/2 lens, 35mm full-frame equivalent, as on the Fujifilm X100VI, with an aperture control dial and a control ring that allows you to adjust your choice of any one of several settings, including the digital teleconverter with 50mm and 70mm lens effect settings. This is a proper street photography camera. However, now that we've got more pixels to play with, I would prefer a wider lens, approximately 18mm, as on the Ricoh GR3 and Leica Q3, a 28mm full-frame equivalent. That would give the wider field of view, similar to that of a smartphone, that you often need, especially for street photography. Assuming an X100 series camera had a 28mm lens and 40MP sensor, a digital teleconverter setting of 35mm would still produce a 20-25MP image with plenty of detail, not too far off the full 26MP sensor of the X100VI. Battery life has been improved from the X100VI despite the new camera using the same battery. Camera brands are finding ways to conserve power more effectively. That said, in-body image stabilization is power-hungry, and the use of it mostly negates the battery life improvement. You get around 450 shots from a full charge. The new sensor-based image stabilization has been custom designed for the X100VI, and this was probably number one on my upgrade wish list for an X100VI successor. These are cameras that are designed to be used handheld, and in-body stabilization allows you to get sharper shots at slower shutter speeds. Fujifilm says image stabilization is effective up to 6 stops, but in my tests I found the IBIS 100% effective up to around 3 EV only. That means I was able to get sharp pictures using a shutter speed of 1/4 SEC every time, while I saw a big drop in my hit ratio using a shutter speed of 1/2 SEC or slower. That said, the slowest shutter speed you can use for consistently sharp shots with the Ricoh GR9 is 1/6 second, and with the Leica Q3 it's 1/15 second, so the X100VI wins here. You can make use of the new in-body stabilization and the existing built-in 4-stop ND filter for creative slow shutter speed effects that weren't possible before, while a built-in ND is also useful for video work. You can shoot using the X100VI's f/2 aperture in reasonably bright light with the kind of shutter speeds needed for video, around 1/60 seconds. The new image stabilization feature necessitates a slight increase in size and weight, and while the size difference is negligible, the X100VI is around 10% heavier than the X100VI at 521G, including battery and card. I still class it as a compact camera though, and the extra weight is hardly noticeable and completely worth it in return for the practical gain. Given that the lens is exactly the same one as on previous models, the same lens accessories will work with the X100VI, including the lens hood and the wide and teleconversion lenses. It also means that the lens isn't weather sealed, and you'll need a lens filter, not included, to fully seal the camera.